Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jason, and this is If We Were Honest. And by the way, my camera this morning is doing some weird things. The white balance is kind of going in and out, and I don't know what's going on there. So if I look a little green, I haven't had a lot of sleep, so that's probably part of it. But it's also the camera doing some weird things. Maybe I'll correct this later on. So I'm really excited about this morning's show. I've got some really amazing people. Um, with me this morning, I have Cory Morningstar, which I think a lot of people already are familiar with. And we also have with us Varun Mathur, who we've done a couple shows with already. And Hiroyuki Hamada is also with us. Hiroyuki is a really amazing artist and also a really great thinker, and he's written some really great articles recently coming out um, about a lot of things that are going on right now. So, first of all, I'd like to just bring everybody in. Hello, guests.
Hi.
Um, so, like, let's just start. I'm just going to go through everyone in case anybody that's watching this isn't familiar with you guys and your work, and then I can maybe chime in a little bit too. But let's just start with you, Cory. Do you want to just say a little bit about who you are and kind of a little bit
Not really.
tell? Right, I know.
I'm really tired this morning. I'm a journalist. I'm a mom. I live in Canada. I go on to Hiroyuki. I write about ecology, the nonprofit industrial complex. Why basically we haven't been able to make gains as a society towards a better towards a better way of life. I write about all this. Yeah.
Right, thank
Writing
you.
about the Great Reset right now, about basically a lot of the manipulations and the framing and language around everything, linking all the groups all interwoven together, basically on background and dissecting actually what movements that dissecting movements, I guess you could say, manufactured movements.
And you're very thorough at that. So thank you so much for being here, and also thank you for your work. Uh,
Having
Varun, do you want to just share with people a little bit about who you are, and first of all, where you're at, and uh, and kind of what is your background, and kind of what brings you to a lot of these issues.
Um, I've been writing and I've been working in documentary for about 20 years. I've traveled extensively in India for a lot of projects, both national and international. My main concern is how cultures change and what are the drivers behind them and the individual's part inside those changes. Essentially, that's it, I think. And um, what brought me to all of this, I've actually been following Cory's work for quite a few years because the curiosity of how throwaway culture is tied in with a lot of the big private investments that are now very visible in what we have always thought as benevolent organizations. Um, that started to become quite apparent. So there's been a lot of reading around that. And, I try and my interest is the relationship that the individual has with the systems that it creates to organize its life. So yeah, I think more or
Great,
less that's it.
thank you. And so I'm still setting this up in the background while you guys are talking. So part of this is I'm part of having you guys introduce yourselves is giving me an opportunity to finish what I'm doing here. I should actually still be sleeping, as probably some of us should, except for Varun. So the other guest, I'm really excited. The first time I've actually had a chance to interact with you too much, but I've read his articles is Hiroyuki Hamada, and Hiroyuki is an artist. I'll show you his website here. He does really interesting pieces, and but the reason why I invited invited him on the show is because he's written several articles about what's going on with some of the frenzy around COVID and the propaganda and of course the Great Reset and how it ties into capitalism and how this is part of a longer plan that's been around to basically commodify and capture life and everything that we know within this financial system. And so, Hiroyuki, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I just like anybody else, I'm just dealing with the extraordinary situation with the virus thing, and also the seasons changing, and we're adjusting to the cold weather, and um, doing okay. And yeah, and
You're
I
you're
don't really have much. Yeah,
you're in New York, correct? Am I
I'm in Long Island, at the tip of it, so it's pretty much I would say 2.5, 2 hours away from New York City.
And so tell me, first of all, tell me a little bit about you. You're an artist, and that's kind of your main profession, correct? I mean, you're
Yes, I have been doing studio practice for, I would say, uh, over 20 years, and I think what happened was that for me, making art is connecting dots. I observe things in my studio and be honest about what I see and find dynamics and somehow come out with profound uh, something that moves me and hopefully moves other people who are looking at it. So it's a very interesting mode of communication that involves things we don't exactly know. I would say that we examine not just what we can observe, but I would like to go beyond and sort of look at the framework objectively, admit that there are things we don't understand, but that's being human. And so this kind of direction in my studio led me to see things outside of my studio um, with the same perspective, and I um, started to notice larger dynamics and frameworks of our operations in them, um, and I started to write about those things. And my perspective, I think, um, has to do with me being coming from outside, and I'm in the States right now, so I can see what's going on from the perspective of being outside of the imperial hub. And also, I've lived in the States for longer than I spend my time in Japan, and I am a parent. I am a part of the community, and um, from that perspective, I see things are echoing in the United States within our society, and also outside of the society, the relationship between this country, Asian countries, Middle East, and we went through. Um, Destructive wars, destructive treaties, neo-colonial relationships, and all those things echoes into our personal lives in our societies, and I find those things to be um, noted because stating those things and understanding those things is essential step in going beyond this feudalistic situation we are um, placed in. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too because it seems like there's a truth out there that is it's it's almost out of our grasp, or at least it's outside of our language capacity to explain it. And art seems like a really great vehicle for speaking certain truths that we don't have necessarily a language for, and we don't have a way. It's there, but you can't quite grasp it. Years ago, I read this book, and I've mentioned it before, I think, on the show. But there's an educator by the name of Maxine Green, and she wrote a book called "Releasing the Imagination: Essays on Art, Imagination, and Social Change." And she's an educator, and she was basically just arguing that the arts are extremely important for our development as human beings, and also for our ability to change circumstance that we find ourselves in, because it requires us to imagine a different reality than what is. We're stuck. Okay, this is the way things are. We're told that this is how it is. We need to accept it. But art allows us to imagine, well, what if this or what if that? And I think that's a piece of it. Um, and so uh, she was saying that our schools, like it's the hard sciences, the maths, the numbers, that's what we really need to focus on. But there is something else that that even me, there's stuff that I just intuit and feel like, but I can't articulate it necessarily. um, and then the other thing I was going to say is, I lost my train of thought, so maybe it'll come back to me. Uh, Cory, Varun, do you guys, what are your thoughts on that?
Go
On
ahead,
just
Varun.
on just the importance of art in helping us to understand the world. Sorry, that was wasn't very clear on that.
I
Well, I
mean,
mean,
important.
go on.
And obviously, like a big part of that is destroying all the very things that are important to our humanity and to those, and the very things that bring us joy as humans, human animals. So, what's happening now really is an assault on people. It's an assault on the planet, but it's an assault on us. And going forward, I mean, I was just thinking not only about the arts and the the importance of knowledge and that connection that we need with nature. But I was thinking that going forward, I saw a picture last night of one of my daughters, and she had a T-shirt on. It said, it, she's works with she works with a lot of artists in her community, and so I think one of the little, you know, businesses must have gone off a print of the shirt, and it said "Women to the Front." That's what it said on her T-shirt, "Women to the Front." And I thought that's the movement we actually need now, women to the front, because this is an assault on women's bodies. It's an assault on children, and it's an assault on our world going forward. And if women are not going to protect the children against becoming, you know, coders, data commodities, human capital for Bill Gates and Facebook and Amazon going forward, if we're not going to protect our children from this dead, isolated, cold life going forward, which is brutal. They know this, that it will be a brutal, empty existence. Then who will? So I think I've been really thinking about developing that, the idea of women to the front, that would be supported by feminists like Varun, like yourself, like Hiroyuki, and really drive this change. It's about protecting women, protecting children, and yeah, I've been thinking about that, protecting all the things that bring us joy.
Yeah, I agree, and that idea of the kind of the more nurturing like mentality of seeing the world through a different lens is that we historically have, which what they would call patriarchy or whatever. But it's interesting about that is that the system is also taking that idea and claiming it for itself, because you see a lot of the narrative around a lot of the changes that are happening is they say the same thing. We need more women leadership, and so for people to be able to understand like what that really means, like what we really want, uh,
Like they
versus
want women to they want women to carry out their agenda, but we need to have our own agenda based on, all the things that actually bring that make us human and bring us joy, and meet everyone's needs, not just the needs of a handful of people, but everyone's needs right across the world. And this, they're very, very good at this, at co-opting women, especially right now, targeting young women and bringing them in to push their agendas, and even to the point where now, they tell us that this vaccine that's never even been tested on humans, their vaccine is superior to our bodies. I mean, this is very patriarchal, this whole thing. And I don't think anyone's really seeing it as that.
yeah.
This is a small group of men that have very much white supremacist ideologies, and they want to bring us all into this way of thinking, going forward, and embrace this. And, what I've been writing about, and I continue to bring it in because we're so screwed without it. If we don't have movements and activism founded on anti-imperialism, founded against militarism, founded against capitalism, we will never succeed right across the board. We will fail.
I agree.
And I mean, right now we have all these movements, but they're actually all financed by the very people destroying the planet and destroying cultures and destroying us as a society and dividing us now, right? We're actually being divided. So now, instead of us uniting against the ruling class who's destroying our societies and destroying the planet, now we're becoming divided against each other. So this is really dangerous. And it's exactly what they want.
And Varun and Hiroyuki, you guys feel free to jump in anytime. I want this to be a conversation. Um, but yeah, I mean that's real difficult for people to come to, is just to see that these nonprofits. I mean, these are the institutions that people have like in more recent history looked towards. They're supposed to be the solution to these problems. They're the ones that are working on fixing it. You have capital that creates the problem, and then over here you have the nonprofits that are going to fix things for us. And there's a relationship. There's a synergistic relationship between the two that it's hard for people to wrap their minds around, that there's actually a connection between the two, and a relationship, actually the connection between the three, because we have, on the right hand, you have people that are, upset about the government power. And then on the left, you have people that are worried about corporate power, and they're working together. And now you have the third sector that works within this whole thing. But to be able to see the whole thing as a whole, I think is really important for people for us to be able to move forward.
Yeah, there's a report. If you go to the World Economic Forum, I have it open somewhere on my computer right now. It's, I think, published in 2013, and it's about bringing in civil society into sort of what they call the global governance, right? That's what they call it. And it's just basically now that's what's happened since I started writing about this over a decade ago. It's actually all becoming, that's that terminology you keep seeing over and over: together, together, together. We're in this together to change everything. We need everyone. So there's this like heavy, um, all these messages, that sort of seep into everyone's collective psyche about being together, and it's erasing class. And then at the same time, they're actually, I mean, right now more openly than ever, it's becoming open. They're openly working. I mean, the governments are answering and serving corporate power and capital, not people, and they're controlled by upper levels and ruling class. And the NGOs, which people think speak for them, are not only part of it, but I mean, even We Mean Business, which represents 24 trillion market cap, that was created with the assistance of Greenpeace International and the assistance of Purpose, which is the for-profit marketing arm of Avaaz. So they're very much all intertwined. I mean, you have Greenpeace International and the executive director. They're all right in working with the World Economic Forum, which is partnered with the United Nations. So you have this huge consolidation of power. And the nonprofit industrial complex is a very key element of that, because they're the ones that the people trust, and they've brought them right into the fold. Okay, so they're like right into the fold now.
Yeah, for sure. Um, looks like I might have gotten the Facebook stream going as well. So yay. Okay. So the reason why I wanted to do this particular show today was because Cory, you had made a post the other day about this share verified and kind of the propaganda campaign. It seems like there's a lot of different organizations involved with this. And so do you want to just give a quick overview of what was this post all about? And maybe I have all the images up. I went ahead and what was funny is I'm like, oh, I want to do a show about this, and then I'm like, let me grab the images that Cory posted on the Facebook post. So I figured, oh, this will just, there'll be like a handful of images. I start going through them. There's almost 100 images. So one thing about you, Cory, that I appreciate, but is also a little bit overwhelming, which is how thorough you are with your research.
I'm a bit meticulous. Um, and that's because I know, even when I started writing, that without being that detailed and that meticulous, that most people would try to dismiss it or not believe it. And so that's why the work is so detailed. So Share Verified, I watched Purpose as a group because they were really instrumental in the destruction and annihilation of Libya. The whole, that whole destabilization campaign, and they destroyed one of the most prosperous nations in Africa. And Avaaz was very instrumental in that. And so when I started writing about Avaaz back in 2012, which is truly an arm of empire, under the guise of butterflies and Save the Elephants and all this other type of emotive marketing, um, and they target a specific demographic. So anyway, I've had my eye. One of the co-founders of Avaaz, actually more than one, I think three of the co-founders co-founded Purpose, which is this for-profit marketing agency, and they work for United Nations, Nike, Bill Gates. I mean, Avaaz has worked with Bill Gates even before Avaaz was created in 2007. They were writing papers for the Gates Foundation. And so this sprung up this year, Share Verified. They work with partners all over the world. It's funded by IKEA, Luminate, which is Skull Foundation. So UN, Purpose working together to sort of control the narrative around COVID-19 and the vaccine. They're really, really heavily promoting this vaccine. And so I've been following that. And so I found that paper buried within an email. And I went through the paper. What's really interesting too, I mean, this whole idea that they care about your health, that they care about our health. I mean, these are people that help slaughter hundreds of thousands of people, with no qualms, right? And then they went to Syria and tried to do the same thing, right? And Syria has actually succeeded, to maintain their sovereignty and keep the empire at bay. I mean, it's amazing what the Syrian army has done. Anyway, back to the paper. So this is about deconstructing how they bring people into their line of thinking, right? And how they target and manipulate and exploit people's emotions and their fears and anxieties, especially parents. So that's what the paper is about.
And
And
for
I
those,
think it's
okay.
it's really good insight into how, this type of social engineering that's going on. And so I think it's really important to take these papers apart and see how it works. Yeah.
And so for people that are watching, they may not know like what the white helmets. I mean, there was an Academy Award winning documentary about the white helmets and about the great work that great humanitarian work that they were doing in Syria to save people. And it turns out that these white helmets were actually uh, mercenaries to a large extent. Correct?
Yeah, I mean Vanessa Beeley, Eva Bartlett, they've done fantastic work on the white helmets, and it's very, very meticulous work as well. And so people, if they don't know about that, should definitely follow both of them. And it's amazing because they make these groups and people involved into celebrities, right? And into influencers. And yeah, the White Helmets worked arm in arm with Al Qaeda. And so it's amazing, right? Um, these groups, it's not what you see. It's not what people think. I think people are waking up, and from the work that we've all been doing, not just myself, but Vanessa and Eva and all the rest of the people that have been writing and exposing this for years. I think people are starting to understand, that they're actually part and parcel of empire. I mean, you've got empire, you've got your foundations, you've got your corporations that have taken over the governments. Again, big consolidation of power. You've got the UN with the World Bank, the UN with the World Economic Forum. You've got all these NGOs and media in their pocket. So they've bought up academia, science. I mean, they're literally all on one side, and then it's us, right? So we have to recognize now, like, it's us. We have to unite. There's no one coming to save us, you know?
Yeah, and for some reason that's really scary for people. Well, it's kind of, I mean, it is scary, but um, there's something in us that we need a politician or we need a philanthropist or we need something out there to come and rescue us. And there's a mentality that's been conditioned. You know, we've been conditioned this way. And so this share verified thing, ties, in with that whole mindset of, there's a handful of people who have like they've created a program for us, and then it's just a matter of like herding us into the system. And but most people don't think that that's the way the world works. They think that, oh, we had a debate on the House floor, and and then we have a media where people are actually having discussions. And the more I learn about the world, the more I realize that this is largely theater, and the real decisions have already been made. And we don't have democracy, we don't have a media, we don't have journalism, and like you said, it's us. And I think there's something about us that tends to be a little bit lazy, but like me, I'm like, oh my gosh, like going to Allison's work and like I was joking about how she's given me more homework than any of my teachers have ever, and then your work as well, and it's like we have to like roll up our sleeves and do the hard work of like actually learning for ourselves, and not just like listening to what the authority tells us. Um, and so I'd like to, and feel free, like Varun and Hiroyuki, if you guys want to chime in at any point, feel free to. But I want to kind of go into the share verified. I went ahead and grabbed these images, so I'll just start going through these images, and you can maybe, as I'm going through them, we can just have a conversation about what you've uncovered. Uh,
This one, for instance, Paul, it's the name of the woman who, the health person in Canada, Teresa Tams. Yeah, so, and what is she, the health minister? Yeah, I don't know. So the person that speaks to health in Ontario, Teresa Tams, you can actually see on her Twitter account her like basically using verbatim stuff right out of this communication. So this communications is right, from the UN down, it's straight across. It's what governments, hospitals, doctors, everyone's been given this to use. Okay, so
so share verified. You
United Nations and Avaaz purpose. And this is again, IKEA is involved. Luminate. It says it's the biggest partnership they've ever had in the world. That's how they describe it. I might even have it in one of these notes here. And then they work with a thing called the Halo Project, which is TikTok and Facebook. So yeah, you've got everyone involved right across the board, trying to control what you think and how you feel, and basically make sure that you stay scared. Right? Fear is very, very important in all of this.
Misinformation spreads faster when you're upset. So spreads kind of implies like it's a virus. Ideas are a virus.
Yeah, so there you've got Avaaz. Here we've got WWF, which is they work with the World Economic Forum. They're responsible for all kinds of human rights abuses on tribal indigenous peoples, rapes, murders, torture. They're actually right now trying to fend off Survival International and our group, a little campaign we did, No Deal for Nature. I think we've been really successful in working with people in Africa as well, actually sharing what WWF does, which is basically steal land from other countries and put them in the hands of billionaires and the global north, basically.
Well,
So
and also I think it's important to see this thing in the context of history, that what was done to indigenous people and what has been done to indigenous people all over the world is it's not past. It's not just history. I mean, that same mentality appears to still be just as present within the minds of a lot of these people, in spite of all the nice language that they use about build back better or whatever. So
yeah, so
part
there you have working with partners all over the world. That's, yeah, right at the bottom there, working with the UN partners all over the world, right? Again, the UN, you have to think in context. That's World Economic Forum. They partnered with them officially last June. And World Economic Forum is oversees all the sustainable development goals, which I mean, that's again marketed as very holistic, but what that actually is it's mostly emerging markets, right? So that's all about money, growth. Basically, the whole global economic capitalist system was about to collapse, and so this whole Great Reset is about emerging markets and going to countries, especially Africa and South Asia, particularly India, to set up the new markets, right, and expand capitalism in those countries. So this is Jeremy Hyman's, the co-founder, and let me just read what that says. So this is about new power. So new power is basically harnessing the energy of movements. For instance, he was in the climate strikes with Greta Thunberg and the Black Lives Matter. So it's about assisting in creating the hype around these movements, giving them media access, creating lots of hype, and then learning as a corporate power, a corporate entity, how to harness that power to get in what he calls it, harness the power to get what you want. Okay, so his books have been read by they're on the shelves of everyone, like Richard Branson. Any kind of capitalist has his book, right? So he's very much, this is business, right? And this is how to get people to do what you want. So that's new power.
He looks kind of smug. Looks like a lot of corporate partners. And I'll
So
just
you've
kind of
got Google.
yeah, I'll
Can you,
just kind of go through these. So just chime in.
yeah, like here, you can maybe read these, Jason, in
Yeah.
here. What?
As an agency, purpose helps clients harness participation for meaningful social impact. And we hear that a lot, the social impact, purposeful brands, new power transformation, help organizations bring power methods and mindsets to their organizations inside and out.
Specialty is behavioral change, getting people to think and change their behaviors, right? So a big part of this actually is we're actually every day being engineered, right, to fit into this new world that they would like to see, that they desire.
It's like advertising on steroids, but being used by the not-for-profit complex, I think. I mean, in the sense that advertising usually uses the same kind of phrasing, imagery to sell objects, but now, in that sense, it's another level of advertising completely. The kind of manipulation that you see here with how they're trying to use language, what kind of imagery has gone in over the last 15, 20 years in promoting these programs. And they start representing all the gatekeepers that individuals in society think are looking after them. Like Cory was saying before, is that now there is a centralization of them. They're all just falling in with each other. And obviously the audience, which is the public at large, is now okay with it, because so far they have been conditioned to think that NGOs are looking after people and nature, the corporations are looking after my needs and my desire, and the politicians are going to make sure that my social contract doesn't fall apart. So now when all of them start combining with each other, there is no critique available for any individuals to make, because they have been so deeply driven by these narratives that have been created, one by extremely corrupt politics, and then really aggressive and rabid profiteering at the cost of life and nature. And then you have this backpack of self-righteous, like this kind of self-righteous backpacking on top of all of this through the NGO, not-for-profit complex. It's horrendous, really horrendous to see that, and it works. That's the unfortunate part, is that it works, because that kind of use of language people have been very used to. Because of the disconnect, they don't know the translatability into real world situations, because there is no exposure at all. There is no, I mean, the exposure that we usually get from the idiot box or the television or the internet is either really horrible news of war and destruction, or it's hyper-real entertainment. And there is really no space between 14-hour workdays for anybody to go start doing research about the translations of these projects which not-for-profits are running, or who's in bed with who. And so when there is a positive message which is put out by people who are supposed to be responsible for society, it's bought immediately. That's how I look at it.
Exactly. So what specifically, the share verified? So what is their message? It seems like they have a new campaign that's very focused. Let me go through some more of these slides. This one talks about Audi and Google's 7 organizations are listed as incubators, which means that Purpose has started them as campaigns and built them. These include All Out, working on GLBTQI rights internationally, and the controversial Syria campaign, which started the White Helmets, and Food Stand, that tries to build informed community about global food. So you highlighted this, Cory, and I think the message here is just that this is a campaign that has a bad history, particularly with the White Helmets.
That they're an arm of empire. They are. I mean, they can create millions of people. They create, for Libya. Oh, we have to save Libya. Gaddafi. I mean, look at that picture. Purpose moves people to remake the world, and they have Syria being bombed.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible.
So yeah, and so this whole idea that they care about your health so much, right? And they've no qualms about going in and destroying whole countries. and they've been involved, Avaaz, with one coup, an attempt to overthrow Bolivia back, I forget what year that was, 2014 maybe. It was like around Tipnis, this project in Bolivia. I know I haven't finished this article, but I will next year, and it's all about Avaaz being responsible for law in Brazil, which now is referred to lawfare, which actually ended Lula in prison. I mean, that all comes back to Avaaz. I mean, this it's foreign interference, right? And they're all over the world. I mean, imagine if our countries were full of NGOs from Russia, Iran, China, they would never tolerate it. And for some reason, and this is a colonial mindset, we see no issue with these NGOs being all over the world in Africa. Why is any NGO or our governments involved in anything in sovereign states, right? And then the whole idea going forward of this whole green technological world, which is very, very destructive, all that furthers imperialism, that furthers wars, it furthers destabilizations and occupations. So this is Concordia Summit. They're involved all over. They're involved in everything right across the board. All
What
these
is
very,
what is
very
what is Concordia? That's they're the New Power nonprofit.
I did write about this a few years ago, but I don't want to speak to it right now because I'm not going to get it right. But I do go over Concordia in one of my articles. I've written a lot about Avaaz and purpose. So there's a lot of information on it. I don't want to say anything that's not right. No, I'll give you the link to the article that talks about Concordia, Jason, and people can read it.
Okay,
Just so
yeah,
I don't.
we can post it on the video as well. But
They're
so
really going into Latin America. Purpose is setting up groups, and even Colombia. They've set up. They're one of the Fourth Industrial Revolution centers for. Sorry, I need more coffee. They set up one of the centers for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in Colombia. There's one in Singapore. I forget where they all are, but they've really seized Latin America, especially Colombia, purpose under different names, incubators that they've created.
so the connection to this with public health. People look at these officials and these nonprofits as being concerned about health. So how does all this tie in with public health and what's going on right now? Is it purpose?
Purpose is very, very important for everyone to get this vaccine. Like here, they're using Hello Kitty, right? They use Hello Kitty now to reach the children. Let's see, oh yeah, Sao Paulo, subways, cartoons. I'm not sure if you've passed it already. They're actually using musical artists, principles for building trust. They want people to take this vaccine. It's very, very important. I've never seen such a push in my entire life for a whole global populace to take a vaccine for something that the WHO said from the beginning most people have mild to no symptoms from. And so they want to vaccinate an entire populace with a vaccine that's never been tested on humans. I shared the other day right from the Pfizer paper. There's no, I, I don't I don't want to get it wrong. Basically, there's no guarantees that it can't make about fertility, right? They don't know anything how it will impact breast milk. It's very, very dangerous. And so the whole idea that this is for your health, when there's no, I mean, these are the very institutions and people that have poisoned our water, poisoned our planet, poisoned our bodies, poisoned our children. And so it's very, very interesting why they need everyone to take this vaccine. I mean, a part of that is it's the beginning of, the whole digital identification, certificates, the fusion of humans with machine, just bringing in that whole biotech. Biotech is an emerging market, right? So, and then the whole messenger RNA is a huge part of biotech. So this is like an experiment on a whole population. That's what I would say.
So you found this it's like a handbook, right? Like it's a handbook on like how to push the narrative. So I'm just going through these slides here.
This one's important here. Timing matters. I've looked at different papers. I've went through one from the Vaccine Confidence Project, and I've went through one with what was the last one? Vaccine Confidence Project is a really important one. That's a meeting that I watched and sort of transcribed parts of. This whole idea of timing. There's a very real thing they refer to as COVID fatigue. And so people are getting sick of this. A lot of people are starting to understand it's being leveraged for different means, not for our health. And so I think they really, really recognize they're running out of time to get people to convince people to take this vaccine. And they're trying to roll out automation and a lot of different things. I mean, in a few months, we went from 3% telehealth to, in the States at least, to 80% telehealth. And that's probably almost at 100 now. So they're really rolling out fourth industrial revolution technologies through this whole lockdown program. All this is happening. I mean, trillions of dollars in bailouts, automation, telehealth, global education, online global education for children and students. All this is being rolled out while everyone's terrified and talking about COVID, right? So it's a complete distraction. It's just like with Keystone XL. There's 350 did a campaign where everyone was focused on a single pipeline. And then while that was happening, Warren Buffett, who funneled like $30 million through the Tides Foundation, he built a rail dynasty, and they moved all the oil onto rail, right? And then you had a whole city in Montreal be blown to bits from a tanker that exploded there. The whole town like gone. And so there's always look over here while we do this over here, right? So everyone's obsessed. There's hysteria over this virus, and all this is happening over here, and no one's looking over here. And that's the point.
So Team Halo, Project Halo COVID. So we have a lot of slides, so I'll just kind of quickly go through them. And if you see something, the vaccine
Talks about the
confidence.
time. It talks about the timing, and it talks about basically people won't. There will not be uptake for this vaccine unless people feel they need to take it. So you've got to keep that pressure on. You've got to keep on that. You have to make sure people remain anxious, scared, fearful, right? Because if they don't feel fear, if they don't feel threatened, there's not going to be uptake. And if you look at the Sustainable Development Goal number 3, which is health, it just supersedes all the other goals. And what that is, that's investments in vaccines. Everyone's placed their bets on vaccines. And if you go back to 2019 in Davos, you have Imperial College there talking about a vaccine revolution. Okay? So this is money. This is, Bill Gates has said as much. He said, and I might have these numbers wrong, but I remember a few months ago him speaking openly, if you put 20 billion into the vaccines, you're going to, that's going to be 200 billion within, I forget how many years, he said. So we're talking about big money here, emerging markets. And again, biotech, mRNA, and then, data harvesting. This is the beginning of harvesting data, right? All this, imagine the data from a whole global populace. Even the UK had to put out a tender for a contract for AI that will be capable of tracking the volume of adverse reactions that are expected. So if they care about the volume is so massive that they don't think humans can track it. They need artificial intelligence to track the adverse reactions. And so if you think about it, the whole stated point at the beginning of the lockdowns was to not overwhelm the hospitals. It was never to stop a virus, because you can't. It was to make sure the hospitals weren't overwhelmed. So going forward, if we know this is very dangerous, which the World Economic Forum a couple of days ago said the world needs to prepare for side effects, right? Get ready, prep. We need to prepare for side effects. Well, can't that overwhelm all of our hospitals and health services and healthcare workers? But I guess it's okay to be overwhelmed. You can't overwhelm with a virus, but you can overwhelm with severe health effects because it for our health. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this doesn't make sense, and the question that I have is, what will it take to get people to at least question even a little bit? It seems like there's just, I thought at the beginning, okay, I give it some time. I'm like, once over a while, like eventually people are gonna start to have some questions. But it seems like this far into it, it's almost as if it's just the same thing if it just started. Like it's like people are still the deer in the headlights sort of situation. Um, I would love to like ask Hiroyuki. You've written some articles, and I would love to hear your thoughts on kind of why do you think it is that people are so resistant to being critical of all of this or any of it?
Well, I think,
Hiroyuki, talk about
yes.
in the cage, like
What?
about the contraction of the cage. Do you
Well,
remember?
right. I mean, well, you're talking about the basic structure we are um, uh, forced to be in. I think I mean, we need to understand that the fact that um, the way capitalism uh, domesticate us, the most crucial part of that is depriving our relationship to each other and to nature and all that, so that the people who have money can create stories and how things are. Basically, what the problems are, what the solutions are, and that's the basis of restructuring by um, changing our labor into money, which can be exchanged into other things. So when that happens, we don't have relationship to, like, for example, let's say that you are a baker, you like to bake bread and you serve your community. People are smiling, people are being fed, it's great. uh, so you have a communication, you have a relationship with your society where you live, and that's uh, situation in which commerce is making sense. You're part of the society, you're contributing, and people are exchanging money for what they use. But when, for example, large corporation come into your society and try to make something for people in the other area, they don't probably live there, so they don't have the interest in protecting your society, environment, educational system, healthcare system, because they're not there, so it doesn't really matter. So when that happens, the relationship we have to our job and money and to society is different. And this is what's going on. This is being exacerbated by the fourth industrial revolution, because when our presence move onto the web, our relationship become digital, and money become digital currency. um, the people who have money can put more conditions onto what we do, They can manipulate digital information better, and it can be also financialized to be made, make it into uh, commodities to be treated as things go up and down. And so this is what we're looking at. I really think that we need to step back and look at the basic situation. Otherwise, people have hard time. For example, people may ask, why are all those organizations um, coming up with these narratives and solutions that are so complicated? And why would they do that? Why don't they just exploit and subjugate? Um, the reason is that we are social as species. We cannot um, put into cages and prosper and prop up the ruling class. So, in order for us to be good, docile citizens that are respectful of the ruling class, helpful for their agendas, they need to make us social in a way that's profitable for them. So this is the whole process of domestication that's being imposed on us, and this is a very tough situation. It's even hard to talk about it because talking about these things would make us being the target, we will be labeled as whatever. Once you have enemies, there's going to be emotion of fear, and when the fear is involved, we cannot process facts. It becomes about taking care of the situation instead of taking care of the facts. Facts can lead to bigger picture. Facts can explain us what's going on, but fear is just fear. It's a device to move us around, no matter what the situation is. It's like um, it has to do with emotion, and so I think it comes down to um, educating each other, educating people about the history of our society being developed into this feudalistic structure governed by military power and financial power, and um, having conversation about those things from the perspective of changing it, dismantling it into social structure that's more harmonious. And this has been done for a long, long time by Marxists of many kinds. And our society, of course, demonize socialism, communism, the academic institution have been totally subservient to the capitalist values. So, and this is really critical part of what we are talking about, because understanding the situation will make us hopeless, uh, desperate, fearful, and that would lead us to destabilized society. And destabilized society would need strong leader. And if we don't have structure to lead us into more harmonious situation, we will have dictatorship. We will have. That's why we have surge of fascism um, around the planet. That's because people are upset and people don't know what should happen. People are angry, and if we don't have this bigger picture, it's really it's a bad situation. It's going to lead to war situation. That's going to give the authority um, justifications for more repression. Um, um, so it's do you know what I'm talking about? Does that make sense?
Can't hear
uh,
you.
yeah, I can't hear you.
I was eating an orange, so I muted myself so you didn't listen to me. No, there's a lot of things within what you were saying. I mean, one of them has to do with um, power and how power uses different different emotions in order to serve itself. And but one thing I thought about when you what you were talking about, which is money, this whole a lot of this is just driven by money. We treat money as if it's a natural thing. And there's there was a great like little paragraph in a book by David Graeber. If you guys are you guys familiar with David Graeber? He passed away this year actually. But he wrote a book called Debt: The First 5,000 Years, which is a really amazing book. Um, and he was quoting a French philosopher who I cannot remember his name, Boudel or something like that. And he was talking about the difference between capitalism and markets. And people always talk about markets and capitalism interchangeably as if they're the same thing. And he said that they're actually opposite things. And he says in a market, it's about the thing is about the exchange of goods and services. So there's that human relationship involved. Uh, I have, someone's growing apples and they use money as a mere intermediary, but the real point of it is the exchange of the goods and services. So there's like a life there. There's something natural that's happening right there. Needs are being met, and capitalism is actually uses money to get more money. So the way he explained it was in a market. The purpose of a market, if you go to the market, is to exchange goods and services, and you use money as a medium of exchange. So the equation that he wrote out was C, which is commodity, M, which is money, to C. So it's CMC. But he says in capitalism, that relationship is actually inverted. To the capitalists, they use money and then they buy a commodity to get more money. But the bookends are the growth of money, and we treat money as if it's some natural, like it's just a natural thing. It's a way to measure what is valuable in society, and it goes completely unquestioned. And like you said, we're losing sight of the real human relationship. Our what actually the whole point of it. I mean, the mechanism should not be as important as what actually is accomplished, which is how is our relationship to each other, how is our relationship to our environment, to ecology, um, and it seems like there's a blockage there, and this. I always talk about the fictional world is overtaking the real world. I mean, that was one thing that I thought about when you were talking. Varun, do you want to chime in?
Well, there is a few things that I can refer to, like the idea of the breaking of human relationships because of the infiltration of capital. I did a film back in 2008, I think it was, on a small market in the central, like the South Central district in Delhi. And this little market space used to be tailors, a small bakery, corner shops, very kind of neighborhood. Everybody knew everyone kind of sort of a place. And then slowly, because foreign money was allowed to be invested in Indian markets, a lot of the big chains started investing in this little space. And so I did a film about the change of human relationships because of the occurrence of investment. And there is an old family who runs a shoemaking store. And these two brothers gave me a very good example, is that we used to have, I mean, they were saying that they used to have relationships with people who used to come to get shoes made from them. And then they would sit and order lunch from the next door kind of local restaurant or tea stall or whatever. And they would get to know about each other's families, right? And after the privatization of the market happened in such a way where only chains, because of how much rent they could offer, it was very easy for all the big chains to replace all the local shopkeepers. Well, at least most of them. And so now, right next to their shop is a very famous branded store. And the two brothers were saying that if you go into that store, their prime directive is to make sure that you buy something and leave. It's never going to be about how your day has been and how your family members are doing and how your kids are enjoying school or not or whatever. Like, so the fabric has been very clearly, it's torn, it's gone. And the only negotiating filters that are left are now subcultures that are created by the technocracy. And these subcultures are, how do you relate to the market space? What are your allegiances to what kind of philosophies that are being peddled on social media, on television, etc.? Like, what kind of shows are you watching? What kind of music are you listening to? So you're already slotted in that sense, and you're in that echo chamber, and you're only talking to those kind of people, and everything else is already like you've distributed the crowd, and that kind of habit making has already occurred. And so the question that was coming to mind was that yes, it is the collapse, and they are trying to now rebuild in a different way, but also how do we manage to de-imperialize the individual? Like, what is the mechanism with which that can occur, so that then relatability within each other, within society, with each other, is possible once again, without taking for granted that the industrial paradigm is the only way to live? That's the question that I've been really struggling with, is because what is the mechanism with which you can manage to actually convince people that there has been an imperialization of desire, of the psyche, of habits, and then to say that, to draw a straight line between my habits and, let's say, mines in Africa and assembly factories in China, just because I go and buy a mobile phone. The immediate question that comes back is, give me an option. What is the option? So the habit of industrial society, of entitlement, is already there. And and I think, like Cory started in the beginning talking about the patriarchal setup, I think largely societal systems have been pushed to a place where people think that they can be kings of their own little kingdom. And so how much of wealth do you accrue, which basically kind of ties into what you were just saying, Jason, about money, is that, so how do I build my kingdom as opposed to other people's kingdoms, which is basically these isolated bubbles that we kind of negotiate our roles within. So yeah, I mean, where do we, that's the thing that I've really struggled with, and maybe we can chat a little bit about that.
When I think too, like I love what you say about the whole. It's about relationship, and we've been conditioned to think the purpose is just to grow money, and then of course to pay your bills, which of course we have to do that. Everybody has to do that, but the value and the importance. Like, there's a coffee shop here in Denver that I really love. Mutiny Information Cafe. I love those guys, but I love going there. I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy a coffee, and to support the place. But really, I'm going to this place to interact with people, and there's an intangible there. It's not just a business. And there's another place in Denver here called the Mercury Cafe that's just kind of like people congregate there, that people go there, and they're going there not to just eat food. You can eat food anywhere. There's a relationship. It's about relationships, and that the fact that we're losing that. I mean, there's a really qualitative difference between going to a local coffee shop or going to a local restaurant than going to an Applebee's or some corporate chain. There's a very huge difference in just the whole vibe and the whole interaction of people, and we're losing that, and people don't understand, like, all these businesses that are closing down. The plan is not for them to come back. And another thing you mentioned to me, which I think, you know Manish Jain? Are you familiar with Manish Jain, Varun?
No, not no. I know the
He
name.
he yeah, he started an organization called Shikshantar
Yeah.
in I think southern India. I can't remember exactly where they're out, but I interviewed him years ago, and he was talking about how in his village that he grew up in, it was always like custom to leave water outside of your house for people that come by. It was like, and it was a blessing on your house if someone drank your water. And he saw that practice go away because of the commodification of water. How they started selling water, and they they quit that practice. And another thing, he went back to visit his village, and he noticed that, like, the wells weren't being cared for. And he said, well, why aren't you guys taking care of your wells here? And they said, well, there's no money, there's no funding for taking care of that. And he's like, funding, like, this is your water, like, just go do it, you get water, and it was just like, and then he also talked about how the knowledge of the elders was not no longer respected, even amongst the elders. Like, they would ask, you would interview an elder, like, oh, talk to my grandson, he knows all about this stuff. And he said it broke his heart because there was, like, this great wisdom that was being lost. And so these young people go away to college, and then they become the intermediaries between the community and these foundation, or the money that they need in order to survive. Um,
Well,
anyway, so
I
those are
mean,
some
there's
things that
two
I
things
thought
that I can.
about. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's just two. Like, there's a very good. I mean, I was on a film shoot. I was shooting for a Swedish filmmaker. We were doing a film on privatization of water, and so we ended up in Rajasthan in the desert, in a tiny village where Coca-Cola had a factory, and there were, I think, 7 tube wells which had run dry because the factory had dug too deep into the groundwater table, which they were doing illegally. And then we found out that there were, I think, between 10 and 12 liters of water are needed to produce 1 liter of Coca Cola. So the entire village was without water. They had to walk, I think, 5 or 7 kilometers away to fetch water from another place. And the kids were being sent back to school because they hadn't bathed. Uh, and there was a couple of small shops in which there was water being sold, which is kind of, yeah, it was just that was quite devastating to see. Um, oh yeah, I lost the other thought. That was it basically. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well,
we're
I would
just
like
go ahead, go ahead,
to
go ahead. Yep, sorry.
add to what Jason was saying about the knowledge of elder being lost. I think uh, that's an important thing to notice because that I think that's happening to any of the institution that are influenced by capital, and that's basically all the institutions. When we have influence of large corporations and associated ruling class institutions, um, the facts and the accumulated knowledge in the field are destroyed, are being chipped away to serve the capitalist establishment. And this is really a tricky situation because activists, journalists, politicians would be mobilized to attack those institutions that are being affected. And that becomes the momentum to destroy and manipulate people as well. So, in a way, we are when our relationship are being deprived, we're also deprived of the accumulated knowledge and accumulated collective um, understanding of a society. Those are replaced by capitalist agendas. So it's really structural, and it's a constant um, um, dynamics, and it affects all of us. So it's invisible gravity we're all being subjected to, and it really has a significant consequence. It all add up to perpetuate this feudalistic uh, uh, way.
Like, I mean, in the sense that the paper that Cory has written in, it's the appropriation of trust that, well, for lack of a better word, empire is now gearing up to do completely. So, what is it that, like, in the sense that the erosion of trust in society within individuals is already infiltrated to a large extent of by either religious allegiance or political allegiance or some different kind of filter that people adhere to. So, how do we make it so that you, we become a cohesive unit again that's functioning for itself rather than being infiltrated by a power structure? How will we do that?
Well, and I think the only way you can do that is for people to have an understanding of the mechanisms, right? Which is what Hiroyuki comes back to over and over and over again. And that's where I think Hiroyuki's insights are really important. We need to understand the mechanisms, right? How they engineer us, how they domesticate us going forward. I mean, it is a complete destruction of the social fabric, but it's more than that. This is, this is like at the point where they're pouring gasoline on the social fabric. They've lit it. It's on fire. It's a pile of ashes. I've sort of tried to articulate that in my writing. It's a very deliberate destruction, deliberate annihilation and crushing of working class peasantry, small business artisans, small shops. It's a move to digitalization online, right? They don't want bricks and mortar. They want everyone in front of their computers. Data commodities, human capital, social capital, everything can be commodified, and the new product is you. And the more you're on your computer, the more you're on your smartphone, that data is profit. Data surpassed oil in 2017. So they don't want you at your local cafe. They don't want you outside talking to your friends. They don't want you in your garden with your community. They want you in front of the screen, right? Your human capital, your data. That's
So
what
the
they're
way
that now. Yeah. Sorry.
so the way to turn it off is literally to turn it off. Actually, I mean, in the sense that you just turn off the machine, which is in the house. So I mean, I've been trying to do it, and it matters a lot. And this is just a personal example. I turn off my modem for a few hours in the day, and that makes such a difference to how I'm perceiving time in the house. Like it's quite an incredible thing that suddenly happens when you turn the switch off the modem, because then it doesn't matter if you open your laptop or if you switch on your phone. There's nothing to check. There is nothing to do. And then, like, you've turned it off at the base, and so now suddenly you have a library full of books that you can read, or you can paint, or play music, or play with your dog, or go for whatever. I mean, there's 100 billion things to do outside of the internet. But that habit that got created, and it happened really slowly, like, because I mean, in the beginning we used to say, as we were getting used to the internet on chat applications and things like this, we always used to say, "Be right back." And I think we should go back to that place where we were able to say, "I'll be right back." Like, I'm not living on the internet anymore, you know. But the push has been so strong that, like, I mean, for example, in India, one company gave people free internet for a whole year with cheap mobile phones. So now that habit is so deep set that you walk down the street, there are drivers or guards for houses. Everybody is perpetually just staring into a small screen. And so, so I try and talk to them, saying, read a book. I gave them a book, or like, I don't know, you guys do some social events together, whatever. You're just hanging out, looking at your phones, sitting right next to each other. But it's a very difficult thing to do, I think. But I mean, on the other hand, there's also like aspirational culture attached to this, right? So I think it is also a responsibility of people like us, or me at least, to say that a change in my life has to then kind of reflect, at least in one level of society, in some way or the other. Because in places like India, I think there is a lot of hope to be able to come to places like Delhi and emulate that life, right? So then the responsibility suddenly is with what is termed as the upper middle class to kind of shut it down. And if we don't do it, then it doesn't shut down, I think. And that's an important thing that people have to. I think at least with our peers or my peers, we have to start understanding that more. Is that we are part of it and we can change it in that sense.
Someone made an interesting comment on the YouTube stream. They said, I turned off my phone for 2 days, and as a consequence, I was denied access to my bank account. And I think, nowadays you still can't access your bank account, your money without your phone. But it appears that coming into the future, because even before this year and before COVID, I already had it in my mind. I was like, I need to start like putting the technology over here and like accessing it when I need to use it, but like starting to like remove myself from that a little bit. And then all of a sudden this year happened, and it appears that it's the systems that they're setting up are going to prevent you from actually even having that option, because if they get a digital dollar or whatever, where like I can't buy anything without this, I'm not going to be able to shop without this. That's going to be a real problem. So that choice of stepping away is it seems like it's being taken away from us, or it's going to be taken away from us.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a real
that's
problem. Sorry, go ahead, Hiroyuki.
well, it's okay. Yeah, you can go ahead. Well, okay. That um, that's been going on. I mean, that's a colonization. Um, it's the power structure taking over our means of sustaining ourselves, and when that happens, um, what are we going to do? You know, would that totally deny us to be existing uh, because we deny their mode of uh, existence? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, we drive cars. We use public lands that are propped up by the authoritative structure, and so this is a situation. This is the way they domesticate us into beings that are um, relying on what they provide. And um, so, again, this is a structural problem. As long as we are relying on the system that provides us with a situation that conditions us to be their uh, domesticated people, we always have to face this situation. And if we all stop using internet, if we stop using fossil fuel driven devices, we will terminate ourselves. So um, it's a difficult situation. We definitely have all the right to be. The, you know what I mean?
But okay, so yeah, but in the sense that when you say that, okay, so I mean, it's a very harsh example to say that you don't buy anything at all from the market from what is being provided to us, right? Like it's a good thought because it can lead to thinking that, okay, for a week everybody in the world just buys from the local farmer and nothing from the conglomerates. But in that sense, what we're doing is that the public itself is commanding the power of its own desire so that it can
Well,
effectively change the behavior, right?
the better example would be when the Europeans um, came to the States. They killed all the Indians and they colonized and they settled. And so, what do native people do? I mean, they are now living on the colonized land. Uh, should they leave because it's no longer theirs? It's no longer commanded by their traditional social structure. I mean, would we just let the people say, love it or leave it? You know,
No,
um,
sure.
I mean,
I think the thing,
so it, it's a really really sinister thing that they are doing, imposing us to be in this situation without any choice. Um, and I think thinking about the meaning of that is really important, along with the fact that think about how to deal with it, because we don't want to um, uh, exterminate ourselves according to their uh, rules imposed on us.
Someone on Facebook asked a question, and by the way, if you're watching, if you want to, feel free to ask questions. And I don't know if anyone can answer this one, anyways. But how is this vaccine connected to domestication? And it says, will it interfere with us neurologically, socially, emotionally? I don't really know the science behind what the actual vaccine is. I mean, I've read about the RNA sequencing and all that, but do any of you want to take a jab at that, or no?
I don't know enough about it to speak to it. Like I've begun digging into it. It's definitely connected to the whole um, what do you call it? The biotech markets going forward. If you look on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange, you'll see, I think on the NASDAQ, there's over 700 biotech stocks, and on the New York Stock Exchange, there's about 30. They must be the biggest ones. So just to sort of start digging into it. All I can say is that there is, I mean, immense, massive coordination and pressure to get everyone on the entire planet vaccinated with this vaccine that they've never tested on humans before. And I just wanted to add, when we were talking about the phones and our ability to, withdraw in certain instances from the system, the mobile is the conduit to the fourth industrial revolution at the moment, but that will change with time, because by 2030, which when everything 5G turns into 6G, they foresee people wearing like more headsets on their heads more, and that will replace the mobile phone. And so there's sort of a window closing, not to mention the fact so much of this, they're really depending not only on celebrity influencers to manipulate people to basically consent and come into this new global architecture, but they're really counting on coercion. Okay, so different ways they want people to take this vaccine. If you look, you can look at the Behavioural Insights team from the UK, which is they call it the heart of the UK government. It's all about behavioural change and social engineering, and they have offices now all over the world. They're actually a consulting firm. So they went to Slovakia and they tested the entire population, over 5 million people, in 2 days. And so they document, right, how that played out. And the Behavioural Insights team was there helping the government carry this out. And so what they do, it's, carrot stick strategy. So they basically, so many people in Slovakia work in factories, and so if you did not get tested, it's like this: they're not going to force it. They don't want mandatory vaccines, because they don't want revolt, right? They want the social contract in place. So what they do, basically, if you didn't get contact tracing, that's your choice, but you won't be able to go to work on Monday. Okay. So same type of thing, right across the board. Oh, you don't want to get the vaccine? Well, that's your choice. But, Monday, your employer says you have to have the vaccine, so you won't have a job. So it's coercion, right? Do you want to feed your kids? Well, if you do, you're going to have to get this vaccine, right? And now they have certificates in Slovakia. If you don't have your certificate on you, it's a $1,700 fine. They make $1,000 a month. So, you've got these severe penalties imposed. So, and even, the carrots, per se, as they call them, are very, very weak. After you get the testing, everything stays in place. The lockdowns don't go away. The masks don't go away. None of these draconian measures they're putting in place are going to magically go away. They don't put draconian laws and measures in place only to, which would be so difficult to ever put in place otherwise. They're not going to just disappear, at any point. They're very, very open about it. This will go on for years. The masks, the lockdowns, all of it, all the draconian measures, for years. This is the war on terror has ended, and now this is the new war on virus. And that also extends to the means to financialize nature, right? Because now you have the whole zoonotics type thing. Oh, nature is dangerous. All these vaccines are coming, all these viruses are coming from nature. We have to keep people away from nature. It's dangerous. The whole message comes back over and over again. People are dangerous. Children are spreaders. Stay away from each other. Stay home. Stay safe. Right? That's where you're safe. Physical is again, physical is danger. Artificial is safe. Physical is dirty. You might die. You might be next in these numbers every day. Hammered over your head every day. Numbers. 3,000 cases, 2,000 cases, like day after day, minute after minute. That could be you tomorrow. So, stay home, stay safe. It's every day is a new day of engineering our behaviors in the way we live, in the way going forward into the future, the way our children will interact. Even I think this is going to do massive damage to our children if we don't stop this. And they now have a straight pathway to our children and to youth through the phone, through the mobile. So, their influence is so much more powerful than ours, even as parents. Their influence and impact, they know more, they laugh. For one thing, something you said earlier about hurting people, they actually refer to that as herding cats. They call this herding cats. That's their terminology. Okay, so, and they know that they have more influence and power over our children than we do. We have to turn this around, and take back this power.
Yeah. I just came across one of the images that you grabbed that I thought was interesting. It says for Black Americans, for instance, barbershops turn out to be a really good place to get health information, and having doctors train barbers to talk about it turns out to be quite effective. I mean, this is from that COVID handbook of basically propaganda handbook uh, that they put out.
Yeah, I have to say this too. I talked about it yesterday with Hiroyuki and Molly and John Stepling. Okay, so you won't. I can. I mean, I pretty much. I'm not really ever shocked about anything I read. I expect everything I find, but going through the Vaccine Confidence Project meeting from the I think believe November 6th, and it was watched by maybe 6 people. No one ever watches or reads these papers or anything, but the public, and they count on that. But they were actually talking about one of the participants, and there's only a few participants on this call from, I don't want to get wrong, it could have been a college in Maryland. Anyway, they actually have people for the vaccine uptake. They're talking about their partners that they have, barbers and stylists in the Black communities that are their influencers. And they actually have people engaging clients and talking to them about their concerns and around the vaccines. And then they actually record these conversations and then bring them back, and then they look and figure out ways that they can change their mindsets and further manipulate, right, and gain their trust. All about trust building. So it's, this is like major racial stereotyping. It's unbelievable. It's intelligent CIA stuff here. Recording customers, you go in to get your hair cut, they're taking the information back, right, to these groups that work with the Gates Foundation, and that it's mind-blowing, very pervasive. I mean, it's like Hiroyuki talked about emotion. Scientifically, people don't think that they're moved not by facts, but by emotion, right? And so this is really targeted and really exploited.
This slide's interesting. Historically, in the African American community, concerns about experimentation are founded and symbolized by the Tuskegee syphilis study. They're pointing out that people are nervous because they've done medical experimentation on whole communities, which we know that they have. I'll just keep flipping. I'm just flipping through these images. Trudeau and Mr. Gates.
Yeah, so there's Global Citizen, the one that Trudeau's wearing. That's, I mean, again, a partner with the United Nations and World Economic Forum. Is a very, very corporate NGO that specifically targets youth, big time. I mean, and they even have points that you can collect to go to concerts and that by signing petitions. So you don't even read them. You click them to get these points, which then turn into access to celebrity.
Nudging. I liked Bill Gates' shirt too. Hug me, I save lives. There's Hello Kitty. Just so.
But in all,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like in every single paper, the strongest weapon that they use against the populace is basically bringing celebrities on board. So they talk about bringing on the royal family, right? They talk about Kim Kardashian, doctors, trust, like they, yeah. So the whole thing around influencers is very, very much at the top of the list. And then they're talking about bats, what are they called? Bat spots, chat. Instead of chat, what is it? Chat bots? No, what are chat bots and artificial intelligence to influence your, perceptions and ideas around all of this. So at every angle and every corner, they're trying to coerce you, manipulate you, shape a mind the way you think, what you believe, bypass your critical thinking capacity, have you react with emotion, um, you know, um, it's really manipulative, right? There's one page in there where they actually state about the people that question the safety of a lot of this stuff. I don't know what page it's on, maybe 27. They talk about how those people are very, very highly educated, and that's
Mm.
actually asking all the right questions.
They were posing it as a problem, like, people are people, and
Yeah,
it even said that, like, and they will have actually read the studies, like they even said that in the booklet, like that's a problem, that someone actually went back and actually read the actual study.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, they don't want people that basically swallow every line and every marketing campaign and every idea and they want people to come into this new artificial world that the new global architecture. There's Kissinger over on the side. So this is Cass, what's his last name?
Sustine,
Sustine.
yeah, and
Yeah,
he's
and then
married to Samantha Powers, who's also in this photo.
they were all part of the Obama administration, right? Samantha Power, war criminal. Like, yeah, these people are all interwoven, intertwined. And then I'm not sure if you were speaking about it, or maybe it was a different lecture I was listening to. Just like all the boards are full of these people, and all the NGOs, all these people fill all the boards. And then you got, even Imperative 21, which is a new branch of the Great Reset from the US side. That's actually a front for the Business Roundtable, which is Northrop, Lockheed Martin. These are all the people that care about greening our planet, all the people at the head of the whole military industrial complex. So it's all very, very much, as George Carlin said, it's a big club and you're not in it. We're not in that club.
When Cass, I remember, Cass, his Cass and Samantha Power, of course, wrote a book called A Problem from Hell about genocide and how we have a duty. There's this idea, the duty to protect, I think is the phrase that they use, but this whole idea of humanitarian interventionism. And she's one of the big cheerleaders for basically, war under the guise of humanitarianism, which is bullshit. There's a great, actually, Howard Zinn gave a great talk about just war, the flaws in that mentality, that there's such a thing as a just war or a good war, that the war is actually there to protect human rights. And the fallacy in that. But Samantha Power here is one of the key architects of the modern version of the humanitarian war. And then her husband, Sus Castine, um, he's I don't know exactly what his position is, but I know he's written several books, and he wrote an article years ago about cognitively disrupting conspiracy theory or something to that, basically saying that, and this goes back of saying that the idea that people don't trust their government is a big problem, and so we need to the phrase, I remember the phrase he used, it was cognitively disrupt. And that's the thing about all this stuff, is it's dishonest. These people don't. The truth does not matter to these people. We'll wait to go on to Greta. That's a whole conversation right there. But um, you know, it's interesting because, like, I lost my train of thought. But anyways, Cass and Samantha are an interesting couple that people should be familiar with. People also
What you were
ask.
talking about,
Go ahead.
cognitive disruption, that's what you were talking about. It's like the break in, like replacing a hyperreal construction rather than lived experience. Right? In the sense, like you're mapping the construct of cognition for people continuously. That's what they're doing. I mean, from all the statements that we went through just now, it's quite clear that, I mean, that's a trick, and as Cory was pointing out earlier, that advertising groups usually use what are called focus groups to go in with various different campaigns that they've designed to get feedback from 5 or 10 people, and to see what was triggering emotionally for them, and then they rebrand and they redo the campaign so that they're closer home to trigger an emotional response. But here, I just want to, it's a very interesting observation that I had a few years ago, is that during the telecast of a very popular show on Netflix, I think it was, or one of these streaming sites, one character dies, and there's a slew of international bits where people are giving reactions to a fictional character that has died. And at the same time, the migration crisis was happening from Africa into Europe. And I don't think I saw even one from the general public as a reaction video to that. That's just an observation in the sense that that's how much and how deeply in control of the public's emotions they actually are. And that's really horrifying to understand.
Yeah, and because there's so many. Like again, they now own. It's all been brought into the fold. The science, academia, the NGOs. They own all the media, right? So
Yep.
they manufacture the movements, and so they create an artificial zeitgeist. And so things that feel like, oh well, it must be. It's like the air you breathe, right? It becomes, well, that's the way it is. Look around. That's what I see everywhere because it's all
Yeah.
repetition. Repetition, repetition, repetition. You hear the same narratives coming from you everywhere around you. And so that's really, really important and really powerful.
It is. And it's also a way of inducing learned helplessness. This is something which comes up. I mean, I studied over the last few years. I was researching a little bit of narcissistic abuse, and a lot of people and a lot of publications are talking about how people who tend to be on the higher spectrum of narcissistic personality disorders will induce this kind of bait and switch cycle to induce a sense of learned helplessness, where then suddenly you have no idea of how to react or act in a given situation, and you're always given a direction to move into. And that's exactly what seems to be happening right now, is that from all fronts there is this continuous overwhelm, and then suddenly one authority will say, yeah, okay, you could do this or you do that, and then people just follow. So yeah.
David on Facebook corrected me. It's Cass Sunstein. Sunstein. I was saying his name wrong. Um, Hiroyuki. Hiroyuki.
Hmm.
Um, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, one thing, uh, it's a fear based, as we've been saying. So that's one thing, and also we're looking at a situation in which uh, three people own the bottom half of the wealth of the United States, for example. So this is a um, extraordinary situation in which those people who accumulated the power and resources can manipulate us, but at the same time, they need to manipulate us to keep this thing going. And that's basically what's going on. As we look at those people, those are the people who have the wealth, and they have the network to get their agendas going. Meanwhile, the rest of people are being fed false information, and that creates divisions among us, and also deprives um our power to come up with solutions, because we don't have the information, we don't have the capacity to organize. So again, this is really calculated situation, as Corey demonstrated with the latest series and other series. It really the dynamics is completely documented and stated clearly, um, in a way people could understand. So that's why we we keep saying that Corey's research is very important, and the reason why she puts so much effort in details uh, is that it's important to demonstrate what's really going on with facts backing up those things, as opposed to slogans, um, uh, slogans used by people who want to manipulate us in one way or the other. There are people who engages in commodified niche of conspiracy theory. They would sell those stories. They would sell our anger and frustration by their narratives that lead us into fascism or anti socialism, uh, anti humanistic uh, perspectives by utilizing our emotion and commodifying what's going on. So it is important to understand, really understand the mechanism of deceptions and lies. Um, um, yeah, that's what I think.
Hmm. Yeah, I wanted to bring up another topic. I'm trying to find my spot. My friend put this book together many years ago called The World I Dream of, and he actually just asked a whole bunch of people what if you were to envision the world in the future, what would it look like? And he actually asked me to put, and I'm not really a writer, but he asked me to write something. I was trying to find my section in here, but so he just asked a bunch of different people that he respected to contribute to this, but and I'll find it here in a minute. But one of the things that I said was had to do with free will and having agency yourself. And I think a lot of people say like, how is this possible? There's no way that you could get all of these people to go along with all of this. And I don't think people really understand the severe lack of actual human agency that really exists. Because if you work for a corporation or you work for you work for the government, we're parts of these institutions, and all the greatest truth tellers that I find don't have they typically don't have an attachment to any like major corporation or major foundation or a government or some large institution that seems to that you in order to be a member of that, you have to sacrifice your own kind of your own self to some extent. You absorb the beliefs and the ideologies that come with being in that position. You know, uh, and so like you know to what extent, and I can ask you guys this, to what extent do you think human agency actually exists, whether you're a journalist or you're someone that's working in medicine. Someone says, well, you certainly, all these doctors and all these nurses and everybody all agree on all this stuff. And I'm like, well, if they didn't agree, is there space there? Would they be allowed to dissent? I think that's a serious question. That needs to be asked. What what space is there within these systems for people to say no, or I don't think that's the case, or well, what about this, or to question it? It seems like um, we're not we're not given that freedom to have those different ideas, and yet there's a belief that that exists, and I don't think it does exist very much. But what do you guys think? Did I make any sense? Oh, we can't hear you.
Capitalism is a cage, as Hiroyuki states often. It's a cage, and we're all enslaved in that. And so, what the ruling class wants to do here, they're the ones that have plundered and destroyed our biosphere and the planet, and continue to do so while they speak about stakeholder capitalism and how they speak about protecting biodiversity. Every waking moment, every second, they're raising and plundering the planet as right now. It hasn't stopped. It won't stop. I mean, that's what capitalism has to do, right? Convert nature into capital. In this system, where they blame us for the damage, and people then internalize that and go, oh well, humans are the problem, we're the problem. There's a tiny percentage of humans creating most of the damage on the entire planet. I mean, 1% of the population creates at least 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions and consumption. And again, it's it's coercion. You need to feed your children in the system. If you don't go to that shitty job on Monday that you hate, that will maybe give you cancer, your kids will not have a roof over their heads. So no, it doesn't allow for space or freedom, the system, because we have a system that serves capital instead of serving people and serving communities, right? And so we need to build local economies, because industrial civilization is killing the earth and all life within it. We need to build relocalized economies that serve people, economies that grow knowledge, that grow beautiful food, that grow joy, things that we need, not things that we want, things that we need. And then once those needs, and then we meet those needs. And yeah, I think we can't, the war machine, yeah. And I mean, and until we have the military industrial complex, I mean, we have these movements that never mention them. We can't resolve the earth's problems with this assault, this war machine, this assault on our brothers and sisters across the world, this assault on our planet, this assault on all life. And again, that's all within the capitalist industrial system. And so it is a cage, as Hiroyuki says. It's a prison, and it doesn't serve people. And it serves a few people, very few people. And it's at the expense of everyone and everything.
So what is to be done? What is to be done?
Well, we need to understand that we're in a prison, and that will help to set the directions right. Because let's say we're in a prison and we're trying to survive, and we follow directions of the prison guards, and we become friends with the prison guards, and prison guards are just doing their jobs, and we are just there for being prisoners. And but why? This is not the system being advertised as democracy, freedom, justice, humanity, and so on. And this is really, this is actually pretty hard thing to do when we grow up in this society, as we are forced to internalize the system in ourselves. Um, we grow up with education that tells us about history, that justifies, and we learn about political system that's supposed to protect us. But if you look at it carefully, it is built to hold up the structure of the ruling class. Um, so when we criticize the system, people get upset, people get emotional, because they feel like they're being attacked, because they have internalized the system in them. That's why they talk about people not wearing masks instead of talking about the system made to exploit people being sick. Um, and how we do that is we need to understand that we are all situated in the hierarchy of capitalism. We all have different roles in it. But if we understand from our perspectives, we can perhaps weaken the system, weaken it so much that there's going to be a true momentum to overthrow it and build something that can serve all of us in harmony with the what we have around us. Um, so that's why I talk about these things, and I like to see people talking about it. And but that's my angle. But other people have different angles to approach, and um, yeah.
So I'm just quickly here, I set this up and I was pretty busy. I didn't have time to put everything together. So people that are watching are like, what are their names? The Zoom call's not showing their names. This isn't a Zoom call. Uh, but um, but yeah, so that was Hiroyuki, and Hiroyuki is an artist. For those who are watching, this is his website, and you can see some of his artwork here on his website. It's hiroyukihamada.com if you want to find out more about Hiroyuki. And so yeah, I couldn't find my part in there, but a lot of it had to do with that idea of free will, because I actually believe in people. I believe in human beings, and I think that we can figure this out if we can come together, and if we stop um, giving our agency over to these institutions, over to these, whether it's a government, a nonprofit, or a corporation or whatever. It's like these entities are not real; they're fictions, and um, we need to stop giving our agency to them. But there's a problem within. It's easy for me just to say that, but we need money to live. We need, I don't know how to get there. I know where we need to go. I just don't know how to get there. But I at least want to have the conversation happen. And, and that's why I started this program. This, if we were honest, is just like, let's just try to have some honest conversations. Um, Before you guys have been on for a long time, and I'm really grateful. But I want to just kind of close this up, and real quick, Cory, do you want to say anything more about the Share Verified and that campaign that you?
I've written a lot on Avaaz and Share Verified, and people can probably just go to The Wrong Kind of Green or The Art of Annihilation and search those articles, read them. Again, like Facebook posts and Twitter. I continue to write and research as much as I can. It's very exhausting. Um, I mean, even Whitney Webb right now suffering from major burnout. It takes an emotional, mental toll, all this type of research and information. But I don't want to leave people right now feeling helpless. One thing that people could do, or even get ready, like right now where I am, it's cold and snowing, but spring will come soon enough. And people right now who have homes, who have bits of property, property on stolen land, I will add, in Canada and the United States, we can convert a lot of land that's right now not utilized or has grass on it, which is essentially not good for anything. It doesn't contribute to biodiversity at all. We can convert our communities into living forests, into food forests, and we can convert lawns into gardens and create, eco corridors. Like that's something people can do. Like I said, not everyone's lucky enough, but there's even people in apartments, there's community garden spots. So that's something people can do, save their seeds, and we can start growing our own food. And that's an opportunity to reconnect with nature, get outside, reconnect with our community, and introduce our children to things that are important, and matter, and things that make people feel good. There's nothing more satisfying than working with your hands in the soil and working outside under the sun and with nature. And so I think, especially right now with, isolation is so destructive, everything that's happening. I think that would be something super positive. I mean, we've had these marches that have been overseen and orchestrated and financed by the Rockefeller Fund and all these same organizations behind everything going forward, who, as they called it, herded the cats to come millions of people to these marches. What if millions of people started creating these communities? Again, communities that give people joy, and fragrance and beauty, right? Beauty is something we've really lost here in our Western societies. And so we can start there. That's the starting point. I think we need a place to start, and that's something very viable. You don't need any kind of government permission. We just go out and do it, right? We take back these are our communities. We take ownership of them. We don't count on anybody else. We don't need funding. We just need, our shovels, and we go to work.
Varun, do you want to?
Well, I mean, these are very, very similar ideas um, to what I had in mind, except in the sense like maybe a couple of days, 3 days, 4 days, I don't know. Maybe everybody just doesn't go to the market. Just grow your own food, like Cory's saying. Like the sooner we cut off the international supply chains and the sooner we start growing our own food, the sooner all of this will disappear.
Yeah. Um, One of the themes that came up on I made a Facebook post the other day. It was kind of a joke, but I don't have time to grab it. But it was I said something about with all the talk of stakeholders because there's a whole thing about stakeholder capitalism, as if they're somehow like, oh, we're going to give you some sort of power over your life again. You're a stakeholder and we care about what you think. Of course, you don't actually get to own anything and you don't really get any say anything. It's all a front. But I had this image come to mind of a stakeholder, and and it was like a stake, and I thought of the vampire motif. The vampire movies, they have a stake, and they drive the stake through the heart of the vampire. So then there was like a conversation. I was like, hey, maybe we do need to become stakeholders. I mean, it was half joking, but it kind of started a conversation on the thread about the mythology of vampires. And one of the stories is you turn your back on the vampire, and it loses its power. Your belief in it is what gives it power. And then another person chimed in and said, "Yeah, another thing is, one of the things in the vampire mythology is you have to invite the vampire into your home. It can't come into your home, unless it's invited." And I think as a metaphor, that's so true. Like, we need to kind of get into that mindset of like, yeah, we need to turn our backs on it, and it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to say or do, but uh, if we really truly genuinely want to live a better existence, and we don't want to kill the planet and ecology, um, there's certain things that are kind of terrifying to think about, but like there's no way around it. One of the big shifts for me was understanding how the monetary system works. And once I don't fully understand it, but I understand the outlines of it, and I understand the general nature of it, like how not I shouldn't say nature. That's not There's nothing natural about it, but the design of it, and with climate change or with different things that I see all this activism around, people are so concerned about the ecology, and yet I realize like there's no way you can solve that problem within this monetary system. The money is created as a debt with interest. So there's already a tax on everything to pay the interest to the banks, and so there's no solution within this. There's literally no solution within this framework. And so once I realized that, I'm like, don't even talk to me about climate change. That's ridiculous because um, I'm not saying climate change is ridiculous. I don't know exactly, what's going on with the climate, but I know that we're doing irreparable damage to our ecology. I mean, that is very clear. And you cannot fix that within this paradigm. I can prove it. You can't do it. And so why is everybody continuing on this? Like, it seems to me almost like laughable that you're going to continue to do the activism that's been presented to you. And so, actually, before we end, I could actually bring this up real quick because I had brought up a slide, and maybe you could mention this, uh, Cory. So let me bring this up over here because one of the slides here had Greta here. There's a total cognitive disconnect here from caring about this problem and the solutions that they're actually offering you as a presentation. This is so funny. Like, this is actually my birth date, the date on this purpose, November 8th. Anyway, do you want to say something about that?
Greta's the face. I mean, it's Greta trademark now. Thunberg, whatever, trademarked her name. That's the face of the emerging markets, right? And that's the face of the whole reset. And that behind Greta Thunberg from day one, the very first post of Greta put out by We Don't Have Time, the co-founder Ingmar Rentzhog. The third person to reply was Callum Grieve, who works hand in hand with the World Bank, the United Nations. He was a co-founder, as identified by WWF, of We Mean Business. He created New York Climate Week. He has a consulting agency in storytelling and behavioral change. He was the third person to reply to the original tweet on August 20th, 2018. He tagged the UN, the Greenpeace, all the main players of this campaign, and then it accelerated forward. And then in the next article I have about the documentary, there was a big international film crew on the sidewalk from the day she sat down with her sign and did nothing and said nothing. There's an international film crew. I mean, this is storytelling at its best. I mean, it's brilliant, right? They had the whole planet eating out of the palm of their hand, and what that did, that was, they had people marching, demanding the solutions that they have sitting there ready to give us: carbon capture storage, nuclear, carbon offsets, right? The financialization of nature, the monetization of nature, payments for ecosystem services. They have all this they want to give us, things that normally a society would never accept. And then they spin that and they harness that power and they have people marching, demanding for these solutions they want to give us, right? And so it's all, again, manipulation of naive, well-intentioned people, right? People want a better world. Um, that was like really gross exploitation of not only Greta Thunberg, but of all the youth across the world involved, right? Who thought they were doing something good. That became a free lobby group for green tech going forward, which is not green and which is not clean. And the whole digital economy, the whole fourth industrial revolution, and the last part of my series that goes through that this is, I call it the final assault on the living planet. Now we need so many minerals and metals that we're going now to plunder the oceans. We're going to start, it's already begun, mapping out how to mine the oceans because there's not even enough on the planet. They want to double the global infrastructure over the next 10 to 15 years. So I mean, common sense tells us that does not mitigate emissions. It does not mitigate pollution, right? That's the opposite direction we need to go, the complete opposite. And these are huge, the 5G network, all the data centers, like this is massive, massive energy consumption. And I think people are going to be stunned. It makes aviation look like nothing. And so, yeah, again, all marketing, all branding, all manipulating people's emotions, behaviors, well intentions. It's very depraved, but it works very effectively, as we've seen and continue to see.
And then the other image that you had on there was the Black Lives Matter, which is that's actually something that I'm very supportive of, the idea that Black Lives Matter, and the idea that there is a lot of injustice that happens institutionally, especially with the police, in regards to Black lives, and yet uh, you have these massive corporations and you have these politicians who are getting behind this. And so you say, well, okay, wait a minute. There's something else going on here in addition to all the people who are out on the streets who have legitimate grievances. There's another layer to this that I think that needs to be explored, about how even that's being exploited and to what aims and to what ends. So do you want to say something about that?
Again, that's new power, right? So you help these movements, you give them media exposure, you give them lots and lots of exposure. I think Ford Foundation recently gave Black Lives Matter $1 billion, if I'm correct, one of the biggest grants I've ever given. Ford Foundation, a client of Purpose. And so Black Lives Matter has become sort of the new corporate anthem. And what that does, they need the social contract, they need the social license. They're very, very afraid of not going to go forward after everything that they've done. They've brought us to the very precipice of ecological disaster. Right now there's a million additional people starved due to this virus thing. They're very, very afraid of losing the social contract. So Black Lives Matter is basically trying to alleviate concerns from Black populations, especially targeting in the global North, that we're concerned, we've got your back going forward. We're going to give you a seat at the table. So again, it's just all marketing, branding to alleviate concerns and to draw. Again, that was a big part of that recently. This year was for voting. I mean, that campaign, how it really took off that year. That was specifically to get voters, Black voters, to bring in Biden, a Democrat. I, I I think that election's a joke. The whole U.S. electoral system is a joke. It serves it serves the same people on top. But regardless, that campaign, especially this year, got a huge boost to rein in Black voters. So I mean, it's never about the health welfare of minorities, Black populations, minorities, vulnerable peoples, children, women. It's always about how to exploit it to serve capital, to serve markets, to serve ruling class agendas.
Yeah, and you also, I was going to mention that you write for sometimes write for the wrong kind of, or it's wrongkindofgreen.org. And your latest article, for those who are watching, is the Great Reset: The Final Assault on the Living Planet. It's not a social dilemma; it's a calculated destruction of the social. And this is actually part three. You did three parts in this series. I was also going to recommend that you add a link to parts one and two in this article, because I was trying to find it on the website and I couldn't. But
Right here at the side, right hand side, but yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
oh, it is there. Okay, yeah. So, anyways, I want to just thank everyone for joining me today, and we'll continue having these conversations. And and thank you everyone who was watching. And I didn't pay as close of attention today to the thread on the comments and everything, so I apologize about that. And I'm actually working on setting up a thing where I'll actually be able to take live call-in questions when I do the show in the future. So I'm working on that, trying to improve on this. But like, let's have more conversations, and yeah, face to face, better the better, hopefully. But right now we're using technology. I was going to mention a story that popped into my head earlier in the conversation. I showed a documentary years ago about marketing to children. and there was a segment in there where they were talking about this thing called Channel One, and Channel One was where they would give schools televisions. These the underfunded schools, they would provide televisions for all the schools, but they had to watch. This was back before the tablets and everything, but they had to watch like an hour of programming. They would force the kids to watch like an hour of programming. Of course, now they have tablets and new ways of inserting propaganda and marketing into education, which shouldn't have. There should be a complete firewall between those two things. But but there was a video that was made by ExxonMobil or one of the oil companies. It was a market, propaganda video that they put in there, and the video was of a guy and a girl, or a man and a woman, like driving in a jeep, uh, out in they're driving towards like the mountains or something, and they're having this conversation, and the girl's like talking about how we're really doing a lot of harm to our environment. We're really doing a lot of damage, uh, and and somehow it's the conversation of the Jeep came up. She's like, yeah, we got this Jeep that's like a gas guzzler, and then the guy looks to the girl and he goes, and he's like, yeah, you love nature, right? She's like, yeah. Well, she's like, well, this Jeep is what allows us to get to nature. And that was the idea there. Like this vehicle is what allows us to enjoy nature. Like this vehicle is bringing us to nature. And it was a really interesting metaphor, which is the idea that like we want to communicate, and this vehicle of this technology of the internet and these computers are allowing us to communicate. But it's also like it's the seeds of destruction built into it, and that mindset of the someone mentioned on, I think, Facebook. I did see someone mention something about the Hegelian dialectic, but there's this conversation that we need to actually remove ourselves from, and start a different conversation. And I always come back to the idea of do no harm is the first thing of the Hippocratic Oath, and we have a system where it's like, oh, do the harm, and then we'll come in after what we can actually capitalize on fixing the harm, and that's the theory of it. But any last thoughts, you guys? I don't want to be the last person, but I'm really grateful for all of you guys to sit in this so long, and we'll do this again. So thank you all, and I'll leave um, Hiroyuki and Cory. I don't Varun. You don't have a website, so can't share that. But um, thank you all for joining me, and until next time.
Thank you so much.